Philip Brown, you're one of the best regarded cricket photographers in the world, but tell us how you got into sport in the first place, back home in Australia.
I was very keen on sport growing up, and as a kind of 17, 18-year-old, I got interested in photography. And before I knew it, I was combining the two. I was working in a sports centre, and I started to photograph basketball and rugby league as a hobby. Really enjoyed doing that, and really enjoyed the process of processing the films and printing the pictures and getting them published. And all of a sudden people started saying, "Oh, can you do that? Well, we'd like to pay you," which I found odd.
Did you come over on tour with the Australian cricket team?
Well, I moved over here in '88,
so, yeah.
and then got this massive job in '89, which was kind of follow the Australians every single day, really.
You seem to me to be a very lively, gregarious sort of guy. How do you concentrate for those 8 hours?
I don't know. I haven't got kind of tactics for concentrating, but I do concentrate. But some days I'll pipe music into my ears but just be aware of what's going on. Some days I'll listen to the commentary and do it that way. But yeah, I think to be successful covering cricket as much as I do, you've got to be patient, and you've got to be able to concentrate, and that's not a big deal, really.
I mean, long lens is obviously a really important part of the cricket photographer's arsenal. You know, you depend on your long lens, but also portraits are very important. You know, I noticed in your book a lot of intimate pictures taken on presumably 180s or 85s or whatever. I remember there's a picture in your book of Phil Tufnel. Talk us through that Phil Tufnel picture, because there's a great humour in that picture.
Well, yeah, I do remember that day, in that I think I was set up in a weird part of the ground. I was kind of probably too close to the players, but they didn't seem to mind. But I remember being aware of this massive lounge chair behind me, and Phil Tufnel being in it. And
it's a wonderful picture. I mean, obviously that is the game, isn't it? Is doing the important cricket stuff, but also having an eye for the behind the scenes, because that's what people love. Often you say that we are working for national papers up against television, which shows everything. What we have to try and do is show something else. Are you conscious of that, showing behind the scenes?
Yeah, well, I think it's similar. There's another photo in the book of a chap in the same Gilligan stand at Hove, and he turned up in a sleeping bag and was watching from it. And I remember having a kind of argument with myself, thinking this is a great picture, but you know, it's kind of rude to take a picture of someone who's not. And I've probably fought with myself for 20 minutes and decided it was too good an opportunity to miss. But yeah, there's so many things on the periphery of cricket. I'm not interested in just 100% getting the pictures of what goes on the field. You know, especially when I go off to the subcontinent, to Sri Lanka or India. You know, I'm out and about, you know, finished training, sent the pictures and back in a tuk-tuk, and please take me to somewhere where they're playing cricket. And I just want to get as much of that as I can.
Locals on the beach or whatever. Yeah. And tell us, on the cover of your book, the wide picture in the middle of the cover, tell us about that, because that's a beautiful use of light and colour. Was that something you went after?
Yes, I was in Colombo and staying at a place called the Cinnamon Grand the day before. And it's unusual, I'd been annoyed by someone. I was on the other end of the phone or something, and I thought, right, I'm just going for a walk. And I walked down to this place called Gallface, which was probably half a mile away. And the sky, it was sunset, the sky went purple. I'm like, what am I doing here? I've not got a camera on me, this is ridiculous, you know, you're an idiot, Philip. And I thought, right, the next day I'm going to be here hoping there's some kind of sunset. and I went down the next day, and it had it looked like there was going to be a nice sunset. There were a couple of lads playing cricket, and I might have suggested that they move to the edge of this kind of road and kind of throw the ball, and one of them bat and maybe get even a little bit closer. and just, I remember putting the camera on the ground and trying to frame this up without looking through the camera, and people would just wander to and fro anyway, and this one image particularly worked.
One of the most important things in any photography is characters. We love photographers, we love characters, whether it's villains or boxers or whatever. What are the characters in cricket that you've most enjoyed photographing?
That's a pretty easy question. As I've said before, Andrew Flintoff used to attract my lens a lot of the time. During that time when I suppose I was a freelancer, and you think, right, where's Flintoff playing today? Shane Warne from Australia was fantastic for images. He was great playing. He turned up 10 years ago with Liz Hurley on his arm. I mean, Shane Warne is an incredible guy to photograph.
Talking of Flintoff, you got a great picture in Australia in 2006, where to me he looks like he's in tears. Can you just talk us through that? What was happening there?
I find that a really weird one, because I was focused on Flintoff. I dropped, pretty sure it's 6 frames on him as he put his hand on his head and kind of turned his head. 5 of the frames just looked like a man with his hand on his head. But this one, 1,000th of a second image, in the middle of that sequence, he looks like he's crying.
The emotion.
The frame before, the frame after, they don't look like that.
Talking of Australians, famous Australians, Bob Hawke, the Prime Minister, you got a great picture at Lord's. Tell us how you got that access.
It was the Friday of the Lord's Test. I knew he was there in a tavern box, and I was kind of thinking, I'm working for Australian papers, the Australian Prime Minister, this is big. I need to try and get a picture of him. So kind of kept looking during the day to, no, he's still there having a drink, he's still there having a drink. And eventually I saw him leaving. I thought, well, I'll just jump down from the clock tower, as we called it, and go and get a picture. And by the time I caught up with them, they were just marching towards the pavilion. So I thought, I think I took some pictures of him marching. Then when they got to the back of the pavilion, this whole entourage, there was about probably 8 of them, including another photographer, just marched straight in. And I had half a second to decide what I was going to do, so I decided to march straight in with them, up the stairs, into the Australian dressing room during the test match. I kind of thought, well, I need to get out there, so I needed to get out past Dean Jones and squat on the balcony and try and get this picture. But incredible to look back and think an Australian Prime Minister's got the balls to go in the dressing room and just sit next to Alan Border, who's about to bat in an Ashes Test match.
There's Joss Butler, there's a famous picture of him in a tunnel. Tell me how that came about, and tell me what you were looking for with that.
Well, I like a neat photo. I like, as a lot of photographers, nothing distracting in the image, just the basic components. And yeah, there was a long tunnel in Colombo where the players used to walk through, and I had my base with my long lens and 600 pointing at the ground quite near there, but I'd keep ducking over to this tunnel when there was a wicket to see if it made a picture of a player coming down, and they'd have to walk right in the centre of the corridor to make it, symmetrical and lovely. But normally there'd be kind of security in there, or workers cleaning saucepans, or from the kitchen, or
ruining the picture.
Yeah. So I think I had to have a good 2-3 days at this, and eventually Joss Butler got out and he walked away from me in this tunnel. And it's also the fact that he's been batting for a couple of hours, 2 or 3 hours, and the shirt's clinging to his body, all the sweat.
The kind of loneliness of the gladiator type picture, isn't it? Now, one very obvious picture, you don't need much interpretation, is Stuart Broad being injured at Old Trafford in 2014. Talk us through that, and also talk us through how the next few days went with this injury and how he looked. Yeah,
it's a kind of horrible moment, obviously, when a batsman gets a ball in the face. But from a photographic point of view, it can be you know, a lot of impact in something like that. And this particular test match against India, Stuart had come out and basically just swinging his bat, so he'd hit 2 sixes in a row, and the same bowler was going to come in and bowl again. So, you know, I'm definitely going to drop some and I must have been quite excited, thinking, you know, he's going to just swing again and what's going to happen, because I've got a frame when the ball's still kind of probably 9 feet from him, which is unusual to have that. So I must have been pretty excited. And the second frame is the ball literally going through the grill onto his nose. And poor Stuart. Amazingly, he played in the next test, which was the following week, and he turned up with massive black eyes and plasters over his nose, and I thought it was incredible.
Now, Philip, on tour, you're known as a really hard worker. You never really take a day off, or you never spend all day at the pool. What drives you, and what are you looking for on these days off?
I do. You're right. I do love, especially if I'm in Sri Lanka, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh even. I will, any free time I've got, I'll jump in a tuk-tuk and try and find cricket going on, whether it's at the beach or, you know, kids playing in the street or something. It's, you know, why not? Because, you know, those pictures can be the most rewarding that I take, especially if I feel like I've found a picture that I wouldn't have found, you know, just going, you know, hotel ground. For example, when I was in Barbados 2007 for the World Cup, there was a day off where there was nothing on, and in the hotel I was staying in, they said, oh, you can come on a tour with us locally, you know, there's monkeys up at Bats Rock, and, you know, and I went there and, you know, saw a couple of monkeys and things, but then I spotted on the beach under a palm tree a father and son playing cricket, and I was like, right, I need to get down there. And after I asked permission from the father if it was all right to shoot it, you know, kind of had to dig a hole in the sand, kind of almost bury the camera and shoot the silhouette of this lad, probably 9 years old, playing cricket, and just phenomenal background again of blue sea, blue sky, fluffy clouds, people in the water. So, you know, that's really rewarding to me. I took one in Chittagong. There was this little lad on this particular day who was playing cricket in a back strip. Well, not playing cricket, he was throwing his ball up and catching it. And obviously he didn't speak English and I didn't speak his language, but I managed to communicate to him that he could really bowl it with gusto, and I wasn't worried about being hit, and that turned into a really nice picture from Chittagong, which was actually, that's back in 2011. The Guardian newspaper chose that as one of their pictures of the year.
This after the game, I'm interested in what happens after the game. You've got a great picture of Ricky Ponting and his daughter. Tell us how that came about after the game.
Yeah, that was quite an early finish again at Headingley in 2009, and I think Australia wrapped up the test match. I think it was the Sunday morning, kind of lunchtime, and you know, we've kind of done our jobs. It's kind of packing up time, but someone pointed out that Ricky Ponting was walking across the field towards, you know, a group of family and friends and stuff. So I grabbed my 70 to 200 and ran around there, and he took his daughter back onto the field, and he kind of just he sat on the ground and put her on his knee, and they were just completely in their own world. It was lovely. It got a great run the next day, was on front pages and in most papers, and yeah, it's pleasing when you get a nice run like that.
There's another favourite photograph of yours taken in Bangladesh.
Shakib Al Hasan, who was playing for Bangladesh. It was a very tight test match. As a lot of grounds in the subcontinent, there's seating and a wire fence. It's, you know, it can be, for me, a pretty horrendous background. But at this ground in Chittagong, there was one area where there was a scoreboard, and late in the day, only for about 20 minutes, it would throw a shadow down onto the seats. So it was quite a dark background and quite a nice background. I think I noticed that on day one. So every afternoon at this time, I'd I'd go to the area that used that as a background, and it was quite a dusty track, so the lower I got the better. I actually went in front of the advertising boards and was getting as low as I could, just scrabbling around in this dust myself. When Shakib Al Hasan hit this shot, again, I think I took 6 frames. In one frame, the sun reflected off his bat and just turned it from a, quite a nice picture into a great picture.
One thing we haven't spoken about is, does it help to have a great knowledge of the game that you're photographing? Do you get an instinct of what might happen?
I think so. For example, I remember specifically a test match where Joe Root came out to bat, and I was kind of in a position that's better suited for kind of wickets and celebrations. And I think he hit 2 balls through the covers right off the middle of the bat, and I thought, he's on his way to a century here, so I'm moving round the side. It's better for batting shots, and moved probably when he was on 15 runs or something, and then I could pat myself on the back when he reached his century, and for some reason celebrated. Maybe he knew someone in the stand just behind me, which was a bonus, and I got this nice picture of him, big smile, hat off, bat in the air, of him celebrating as well. But yeah, it's hopefully after 30 years of covering cricket, you can kind of tell or predict what's more likely to happen than not.
So all that experience has paid off, which makes you a great cricket photographer.
Well, I hesitate to say that.
I can say that, and you are, and it's been a real pleasure hearing about it, and good luck with the book.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.